Every year, there are still millions of people who move out of their country in seek of money and better life. We are not talking about people working in IT companies earning thousands of dollars, but instead about people who are moving to countries like Dubai, Malaysia, Singapore to do household works, where most of these people won't even know how to read or write in local or common languages, making them vulnerable in ways that are hard to imagine. The reason today's case is important to hear is the woman who hired this maid from Myanmar was not only inhuman, but was an absolute psychopath hiding behind normal life. What happens when an innocent woman is trapped with a psychopath in a seemingly safe, developed nation? How far can cruelty go when there is no one to stop it? This is the chilling true crime story we are about to uncover that will make you question the safety and humanity of our world. On the morning of July 26, 2016, around 9:30 am, a local clinic in Singapore received a phone call from a woman. She calmly explained that her maid had suddenly fallen unconscious while working in the kitchen. Despite multiple attempts to wake her up, the maid was not responding. The woman then urgently requested that the doctor be sent over quickly to assess the situation. The doctor here responded, explaining that the clinic was quite busy with many patients waiting, so it might take some time for him to reach home. Given the critical nature of the situation, he advised the woman to call an ambulance instead and bring her directly to the clinic for immediate care. The woman replied, insisting, "No doctor, the patient seems fine. We will wait until you come to the house." The call had come in around 9:30 am, and it wasn't until approximately 11:50 am, about 2.5 hours later, that the doctor arrived at the home. As he stepped inside, he noticed a young woman around 25, lying on the sofa, appearing still and unconscious. The doctor immediately recognized the young woman. Just 2 months earlier, in May 2016, the same woman had visited the clinic along with her house owner. The house owner's name was Gayatri Murugan, and the maid was Piang Ngaih Don. During the early visit to the clinic, Piang was suffering with cold, fever, and swollen legs. Doctor also recalled that Piang had been wearing a face mask and a sunglass during the appointment, covering much of her face. As doctor started to examine Piang, he noticed several wounds on her face and all over her body. Concerningly, he asked Gayatri about the injuries. She carelessly replied that Piang had eyesight issues and often slipped and fell in the kitchen floor at night. Doctor at that point did not ask much about the wounds, but advised Gayatri that the injuries in Piang's leg is in critical condition and she should return to the clinic for further test. However, that was the last time the doctor saw Gayatri and Piang at the clinic. When the doctor arrived at the home and saw Piang lying on the sofa, her mouth was open and she appeared noticeably thinner than the last time he had seen her in the clinic. As he checked her, he discovered that her pulse had been zero for several hours. He even tried focusing torchlight in her eyes but received no reaction. The doctor turned to Gayatri and her mother, who were in the room, and informed them that Piang was no more. Gayatri and her mother, seemingly in disbelief, insisted that Piang had shown signs of movement just an hour earlier. They pleaded with the doctor to check her again or take her to the clinic for further examination. However, doctor sensed that something was wrong here. Trusting his instincts, he decided to call the police, feeling that the situation required immediate investigation. He made sure to stay at the home until authorities have arrived. When police arrived with paramedic team, they officially confirmed Piang's death around 12:30 p.m. As the police began their investigation, they first questioned Gayatri, asking why Piang hadn't been taken to the hospital around 9:30 am, especially after doctor had warned that their condition seemed critical. Gayatri maintained her calmness, replied, "Piang looked weak, but we didn't expect it was this bad." However, the truth began to unravel as doctors started their autopsy on Piang's body. What they discovered was horrifying. Piang's weight had dropped to just 24 kilos in her final days, a true indication that she had been starved nearly to death. As they examined further, they found a total of 41 internal and external wounds on her full body. The autopsy revealed even more disturbing details. Piang's throat had a fractured thyroid bone, a clear sign of severe trauma. The ultimate cause of death was determined to be hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy. The condition caused lack of oxygen and blood flow to the brain. Gayatri and her family not only neglected Piang, but had subjected her for unimaginable suffering. After the disturbing details of Piang's autopsy report was revealed, police quickly gathered key evidence and arrested all the 3 people living in that apartment. It was a shocking discovery that Gayatri's husband, Kavin Selvam, was also involved in this crime. Even more upsetting, Kavin was a police officer in Singapore. This guy who should be protecting people but rather decides to torture. Once after arrest, Kavin was immediately stripped out of his police job and taken into custody for questioning. Along with his wife Gayatri, who was a main suspect, and also with his mother Prema. The investigation took a darker turn when the forensic team searched the apartment and found a crucial piece of evidence. Yes, a CCTV camera was installed inside. When police questioned Kavin about the CCTV recordings, he claimed that the system was removed a year ago, but the police knew better. They managed to trace back all the footages, including the day of incident. The lie only made things worse for them, exposing the cruelty that had taken in the apartment. The CCTV would become a vital part of the evidence, revealing the true extent of Piang's suffering and the calculated nature of the crime. That's when this true horror story behind this murder came to light. Piang was originally from Myanmar, a woman from a very poor family. At just 20 years old, she became pregnant and gave birth to a baby boy. By the time she was 23, driven by desperate need to provide better life and education for his son, Piang made a difficult decision to seek work outside Myanmar, as her country was struggling with severe economic crisis. Her friend helped her to find a job in Singapore, where she was supposed to work in Gayatri's apartment as a babysitter for Gayatri's 2 kids. At least, that was what mentioned in her visa document. However, it was only after arriving to Singapore that Piang realized the true nature of the situation she had been walked into. There were strict rules given to Piang: no use of phone, no holidays, and working every single day without a break. Piang was expected to stay in the apartment and the food was given by the family. In May 2015, Piang arrived to Singapore, but within few months, Gayatri's attitude towards Piang began to change. Gayatri started to show dissatisfaction with Piang, accusing her for eating too much and she wasn't clean like them. At first, it was just harsh words and yelling, but as time went on, Gayatri's behavior turned into violence and abuse. She began eating Piang, slapping her, kicking her, and even cutting her hair in fits of anger. The cruelty didn't stop there. Gayatri's mother Prema soon joined in, treating Piang with the same harshness. They started to starve Piang, giving her barely enough food to survive. Just a few slices of bread soaked in water, leftover baby foods, and some small portion of rice. On top of this, Piang was allowed to sleep only 5 hours each night. This constant abuse took a severe toll on her body. Within 14 months, she wasted away for just 24 kilos. The torture was so intense, even when Piang went to bathroom or took a shower, she had to leave her doors open so that Gayatri and her mother can check if Piang was clean. They would drag her by her hair even for the smallest mistake, kicking onto her stomach with full force. In May 2016, Piang was taken to the clinic as we discussed earlier. But even after the clinic visit, the torture continued. The following month, they pressed a hot iron against her forehead, leaving burn marks that would forever scar her. On the night of incident around 11:30 p.m., Gayatri noticed Piang moving slowly inside the kitchen. Frustrated, Gayatri slapped Piang. As unable to bear the pain, Piang slowly collapsed to the floor. Seeing this, Gayatri grew even angrier, assuming Piang was faking. In this cruel act, Gayatri and her mother mixed detergent with water and began pouring it on Piang. When she still didn't respond, they continued pouring water until Piang was completely soaked. They even dragged her from the kitchen to the living room and finally to the bedroom, where they tied her hands to the window grill, leaving her in that position all night. At some point during night, Piang woke up and begged for food, but Gayatri coldly told her that dinner time was over and it was time to sleep. She reminded Piang she needed to wake up at 5 a.m. to start work. Piang was left tied to the window grill with wet clothes all night. The next morning around 5 a.m., Gayatri tried to wake Piang but got no response. Growing frustrated, she slapped Piang, pulled her hair and shook her like a toy. But Piang remained unresponsive. Panicking, Gayatri called her mother and husband. They all tried waking up Piang, even attempting to feed her Cerelac. Even at this situation, they gave baby food. It wasn't until 9:30 a.m. that they finally called the clinic. By the time doctor arrived, Gayatri changed Piang clothes, cleaned her wounds, and made her sit on the sofa. Meanwhile, Kavin Selvam hurried to uninstall the CCTV camera. Once the doctor declared Piang was no more, Gayatri and her mother pretended to take care. However, all the torture and abuse they had done to Piang were captured on the CCTV footage, revealing the full extent of their cruelty. The trail of this horrific case began in 2021, focusing solely on Gayatri's role, with separate trials set for Kavin Selvam and Prema. Her defense lawyer submitted a medical report stating Gayatri suffered from obsessive-compulsive personality disorder, arguing that this condition should be considered for reduced sentencing. However, the prosecution strongly countered this argument. They emphasized Gayatri's action, starving, beating, and ultimately torturing a 25-year-old woman to death, were beyond any justification. The prosecution insisted that Gayatri should be getting maximum sentence to ensure justice for Piang and her family. In the end, Gayatri was sentenced to 30 years in prison. Despite the overwhelming evidence, her mother Prema was released from all 50 charges due to lack of conclusive proof. Kavin Selvam, who had lost his job as a police officer, was sentenced to 10 years in prison. This case clearly shows that finding a job in foreign country is a personal choice. But it's always better to at least know the local helpline number and NGO addresses in case of any trouble at workplace. Also, if we were in Piang's situation, we could have still done nothing. Just imagine one false theft complaint from Gayatri could have ended Piang's life in prison, especially when Kavin Selvam being a cop, which added to the fear factor. In the end, 3 children lost their mother, Piang's son in Myanmar, and Gayatri's 2 kids. Again, thanks a lot for watching this video. Until next time, Christiana signing off.